Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another Darrow webinar. Let's just give it a few seconds and wait for more people to join. It's wonderful to see some familiar names and new names. Welcome, everyone. Okay, I think we'll start. So welcome everyone. My name is Amit Shemesh from Darrow, and thank you for joining us to a medical mass torts webinar today. In the next half hour, we will look together at how smarter data and better tools are changing the way firms discover, qualify, and act on medical mass tort cases, so more people get the justice they deserve. Before we continue, I'd love to introduce our speakers for today. I'm joined by two incredible colleagues that I'm very lucky to work with. Shelbi Lifshitz has nearly a decade of experience driving growth and business development for tech companies in a number of different sectors. Most recently, Shelbi has spearheaded the expansion of Darrow's mass torts practice, collaborating with many leading plaintiff law firms in the US. Shelbi combines her business acumen with law school training to deliver the most impactful solutions for our law firms. We're also joined by Sean McCalister. Sean sits at a solution architecture team, helping attorneys tailor the right legal intelligence solutions for their firms. Prior to joining Darrow, Sean held business development roles at Cravath and White & Case and was on the outside counsel management team at Citibank. So let's dive in. And before I hand over to our speakers, I'd love to set the stage. So medical mass torts sits at the intersection of science, regulation, and human stories. Anyone who works on these cases knows that. Signals of harm live in silos. FDA reports, medical literature, label changes, case filings, and obviously the personal impact. And there's no one single source that tells the whole story. Passive safety systems only capture a fraction of what's really happening out there, with research commonly estimating that only 5 to 10% of drug reactions are actually reported. And public health agencies themselves acknowledge substantial underreporting. That means that the earliest clues are faint, and it's very easy to miss out on them. So here are some case studies that really highlight what's happening in this market. The first case is Risperdal. This is a drug for schizophrenia and bipolar disorder victims that were complaining for a number of side effects, including dizziness, blurred vision, anxiety, and nausea. This specific case took 9 years to litigate, and the settlement was $3 billion. The other big case that many of you might know is Acto's drug for type 2 diabetes, where victims were unfortunately diagnosed with bladder cancer, with litigation being 7 years and a big settlement of $2.4 billion. And lastly, another very well-known case that many of my friends personally know is the Yaz birth control pill, with victims that ended up suffering from heart attacks, blood clots, strokes, and gallbladder problems, with a very long litigation that ended with a big settlement. So litigating these kind of cases takes many years, and as a result, you have to really make sure that you know what you're getting into. And clearly, there is a big role for technology in these type of cases that is changing the landscape, and it makes it much more strategic to be ahead of the curve in discovering these cases when they're just originating. And with that, join me in welcoming our first speaker, Shelbi.
Thank you so much, Amit. It's great to be here. Welcome, everyone. Today, we're going to be talking about a really interesting challenge in modern litigation, and that is medical mass torts, and how technology and data intelligence can help law firms find, qualify, and litigate these cases more effectively. So we'll start by framing the core problem. Okay. The challenge with medical mass torts. So medical mass torts are notoriously complex. One of the biggest challenges, data. The information that is available to detect wrongdoing or identify harm is almost always decentralized and unstandardized. So the critical data points that are telling a story or make up a phenomenon are spread across multiple databases. So we're talking about adverse event reports, medical journals, label data, recall data, and they're never all getting together and pumping out a compelling narrative. No, you as the attorney really need to try and connect those dots. So now it's not helpful that side effects are also often underreported, and even when reported, they may not come directly from individuals who are harmed. We understand that, like Amit said, only about 10% of adverse events even get reported. So, this creates massive obstacles for attorneys trying to identify negligence and viable cases early enough to make a real difference, right? Identifying strong cases. So when it comes to identifying strong cases, there are usually two major challenges coming up, and that's volume and variability. So some torts are low volume, which often means they're expensive to uncover. You're looking for needles in a haystack. Other torts can generate super high volumes of leads that are then become difficult to qualify and to effectively manage. So the high volume cases in particular, they require skilled intake teams capable of handling very sensitive conversations with individuals who are often in distress, and they have to all do all of that while maintaining a high level of efficiency and also compliance. So this is a super resource intensive, highly competitive space. And to succeed, firms have to make strategic bets on which cases to pursue. And they have to do that by balancing risk, cost, and of course, potential return. And this is a contingency business. So you're often facing years of litigation against aggressive, very well-funded defendants. So how can you make the right bets with confidence? So the answer, data-driven decision making. That's what we believe here at Darrow. So we believe that technology can really shift the balance. And we asked ourselves, what if attorneys had access to all of that competitive intelligence data, insights drawn from medical, regulatory, digital footprints that can help them to identify actionable liability claims, to evaluate them accurately and litigate them with confidence? So we set out to build just that, and it's going to be really exciting. Sean is going to show you a live demo shortly, but I'll just quickly tell you about it. So using technology to detect medical mass torts, we created a legal intelligence platform that uses generative AI, large language models, to uncover digital evidence of harm and wrongdoing, and to really try to tie together those data points and more effectively tell a story. So our goal is simple: to bring justice to every patient harmed by a drug or a medical device. What do we have to do? So step one, we have to gather, clean and normalize the data. So we start by cleaning and standardizing disparate data sets, ensuring no critical details are lost due to messy or inconsistent data. Then we need to cross-reference multiple sources. So our AI is then scanning and integrating data from adverse event systems, recall databases globally, medical literature globally, to identify signals that something may be wrong. So the next thing that we do is dynamic case scoring, right? So the platform will also assign a score to each potential phenomenon, signaling which drugs or devices are more likely to be causing harm. So we actually will score studies and identify which studies are stronger and more impactful in the event of litigation, and so on. So scoring and prioritizing cases. So that's a little bit about our process. Now, that's only a part of the picture. Once the phenomenon or the cases start to be identified, you need plaintiffs. You need real people with legitimate claims. So qualifying these plaintiffs is it's a challenge, right? So it's not just about running ads or generating leads, though that's a big part of it. It's about having empathetic, experienced, intake teams who can speak with individuals, sharing painful, sensitive details about their health and experiences. And then there's the logistics, right? So tracking every qualified plaintiff, managing all of the evidence, all of their medical and private health data. So set those sensitive details, and then you also want to maintain transparency and engagement with them throughout the entire process. So that's why at Darrow we also built a dedicated in-house call center. Our team personally speaks to each individual who comes through campaigns. We vet them carefully, and we qualify them for a given case. And we developed Plaintiff Link, which is a comprehensive platform for managing that plaintiff data, and it provides a complete view of all of your clients, tracks the progress through the intake funnel, and then all while maintaining that compliance and that transparency. And so to recap, Darrow helps attorneys detect medical mass torts early with AI-driven intelligence, to evaluate and prioritize those cases with confidence, and then to qualify and manage plaintiffs efficiently through a secure, purpose-built system. So this combination of data intelligence and human connection allows firms to focus their time and resources on what truly matters. That's litigating those cases and getting justice for those who were harmed. And with that, I'm really excited to hand it to my colleague, Sean, who will take us through the inside of the platform and show us exactly how all of this is going to work in practice. Sean.
Thanks, Shelby. Yeah, it is really exciting to see what we're doing here, and excited to show all of you our tech in action and how it helps you save time and really quickly detect and evaluate potential torts. So as Shelby was mentioning, there is a real problem with data being unstructured and scattered. So we brought everything into this dashboard. So we have a separate dashboard for medical devices and pharmaceutical risk. And just being cognizant of everyone's time, we're just going to focus today on the pharmaceutical side. So quickly, just to bring everyone up to speed, what's in this dashboard. So we pull data from the FDA FAIRS dashboard. So we have the data back from 2018 to present. As Shelby mentioned, we also have labels. So the FDA label database. And it's not just for the current year. We bring them for all the previous years as well, so we can track label changes. And we also have medical studies. On the medical device side, it's from MAUDE. We look at global recall data and things like that. So when you first log in, you can see high level up top, high level snapshot of what you're looking at. So it's almost 1.8 million FDA reports. We categorize the severity of the events, low, medium, and high. So you can see there's around 883,000 medium and high severity events. And then lastly, there's 141,000 unlabeled reactions. As Shelby mentioned, we standardize and normalize the data. So what does that mean? On the pharmaceutical side, that means we can search for a drug's active ingredient. So for example, semaglutide has been in the news recently. So you can see when we search, all the data points up top change, and then you can see a list of our litigation leads. So not only does it pull Ozempic, but also Wegovy and any other semaglutide that is mentioned in the FDA FAIRS database. In terms of the reporting, we limit the reports that you're seeing between the drug and the reaction type to those with more than 100 plus adverse events. We want to filter out some of the noise and realize those might be a little too early on for cases to develop. In addition to being able to search by brand name or active ingredient, you can also search by reaction type. So say you were looking into drugs that cause the reaction of death. You can type that in, and then you can see now there's 186 pharmaceuticals where there's more than 100 plus reports where the reaction is death. We also have a series of filters which enable you to really drill down and save you time, right? So is the reaction on the label? You can see we can click no, and then we're left at 4. There's also, we can look at things like, is it attributed to a pre-existing condition, right? To filter out some of those false positives. And as Shelby mentioned, we do bring in a number of scientific studies, and we rate those from a scale of 1 to 5. 1 being there's no association or refutes that that reaction is caused by the drug, all the way up to 5 stars, which is strong causal evidence. So I just want to show you sort of how this works in practice. So say we want to look into a drug like Ozempic. So let's just type in Ozempic. And you can see we have 29 leads, right? So there's more than 100 plus reports, and these are the reaction types. So let's just say we don't know that there's an MDL going on. I think most recently I saw it's up to around 2,800 cases. But I just want to bring in Torch and ask it to just give us like a little bit of background on the litigation history of Ozempic. And briefly, Torch is essentially a legal intelligence assistant that lives right in your browser. I found it super helpful when going through the different drugs and finding things, right? Like I took a few health law classes in law school, but by no means am I an expert. But using Torch, I'm really able to drill down and gain substantial information and like find real legal violations and gain real insights. So you can see here, right? There's an MDL. Looks like over 2,800 lawsuits, right? So then we can search something like if we want the master complaints from the MDL. So right, so Torch is going to provide us this link, and as that's coming up, we can sort of scroll down, right? Like I think everyone at this point has sort of seen the nausea, the vomiting, the stomach paralysis, vision loss, right? There's a number of side effects that have been widely reported. So here's provided a link to the master complaint, right? You can see here it's 245 pages and we don't have a ton of time. So I'm just going to click key insights. So like everything we do here at Darrow, Torch is made by lawyers for lawyers. So it really does have a legal lens when it looks at everything. It's also really nice because there's no need for context switching, right? Like it follows me wherever I go. So it keeps track in my chat history of different pages I visited. We can save this to a folder and then just ask that folder specific questions. There's also a button here where we can share our chat with our colleagues. So it's a great way to collaborate. So as this is loading, we can go back to our dashboard. And let's just throw on some filters and see what we can sort of exclude. So let's say, here we go. So it gives us the central issue, a summary of the complaint, right? And remember that complaint was 245 pages, so that was pretty quick. It also reveals the parties, right? So the drug manufacturers, Novo Nordisk, and Eli Lilly. And let's click on alleged harm and see what they're saying. So various forms of injury related to GLP-1s, so stomach paralysis, intestinal obstruction, gallbladder injury. So you can see here, we do have a lot of those are visible, but maybe they missed something. Let's say that the reaction is not on the label. So now we're filtered down to 6. And I'm interested on this alopecia one because I haven't seen that anywhere. So let's go ahead and click on that. And then for each drug reaction pairing, when you first click on it, you'll see the lead score, right? So you see we've evaluated this as a high lead score. And that's based on a variety of factors. Is the reaction on the label? Is it attributed to a pre-existing condition? What's the scientific studies, causation? What does that look like? So you can say this is a pretty high lead score. And for each reaction, we also include a submission trend, right? So obviously making a decision to get involved in one of these is a very it's a long-term decision, so you want to make sure you're operating with complete information. So here you're able to see the trends, right? Is it increasing? Is it decreasing? So you can look in like, what's my CAC cost going to be like this? Is it going to be hard to find plaintiffs? Is it going to be easy? And we'll keep scrolling down. And then we also, along those lines, in acquiring plaintiffs, for each reaction pairing, we have patient demographic summary. So you can see here, it's very heavily skewed female, right? 92% female. Median age is 65 years. If we had some more time, I'd probably look at Torch and ask it to just pull the patient demographics of people with alopecia to see if that's in line with the data, or if this is something that's askew and maybe raises some red flags. We also include a number of different, all the studies. And as I mentioned, we rank them from 1 to 5 stars. So you can see here we have 4 medical studies related to alopecia, hair loss, and semaglutide use, specifically Ozempic. So let's just click on one of these studies. And again, like this is pretty lengthy and we don't have a ton of time, so I can just ask Torch to give me a summary and conclusion. So summary. Just to see what it says. Okay, so it's a cohort study. Included almost 2,000 users. And it noticed a noticeably higher risk in women. And suggests that weight loss and nutrient deficiencies may contribute to the increased risk. So maybe we have something here, maybe we don't. Probably need to look into it a bit more. But I know we're reaching my time, so I just want to give some quick highlights on the medical device dashboard. So we have all this information. We also provide groupings of reactions. So you're able to, when you drill down onto a device, look at whether it be a device problem or patient problem. And so rather than going to mod and exporting it to Excel and deleting the duplicates and then trying to figure out what the common problem is, in the dashboard, you're able to quickly sort those and just look at the event narratives that you want to look at. So really exciting time here at Darrow, and appreciate everyone's time. And with that, I think that's my time. If you have any questions about our dashboards or Torch, please feel free to reach out. Would love to talk to you about them.
Thank you, Sean, and thank you, Shelby. I think that this is a great time to move on to Q&As, and we have 2 questions. The first one makes sense for you, Shelby. What are the most significant data-related obstacles you encounter when handling medical product liability mass torts? And how can technology help overcome these challenges?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said in the presentation, data is a big part of this. When we're really focusing in on the problem, I'll start with one thing. Like anybody who's navigated through the FAIRS database knows it's not a fun place to be. So I think that our Sean is in there all day long, but you know, it's not a fun system to navigate. It's very hard to navigate through the data, even just as a starting point, that adverse event data. You have all that data in Darrow's dashboard in a way more user-friendly, way more digestible format. So that's first of all. Second of all, what we have found in most of your MDLs today is in terms of the timeline of events. You have somebody who's taking a drug, and they end up having an adverse reaction, and they're reporting that adverse reaction. That adverse reaction gets reported, and it's in FAIRS, and you can monitor it from that point. But oftentimes it's not until you have other signals that you can start to predict that there may be a phenomenon here that's worth looking into, right? So it's being able to identify when do you even start to monitor certain data points. So our system can really help you to do that, kind of having like a watch list. You might not have that concrete study yet, but often that adverse reaction happens at some point. The manufacturers start to realize that people are reporting certain side effects, and at some point they're going to probably change the label. And almost all the MDLs that you see, you have a label change, which is kind of an admission from the manufacturer that, like, okay, we've realized that this drug is causing this adverse reaction. And so, maybe it's not a full admission. You need to have the scientific studies, which I'm going to get to in a second. But then you have that label change data, right? That's already in another place. So trying to connect that adverse reactions, the label change, did the label address the adverse reaction that I'm looking at? Is it severe enough to continue to litigation? Is it just a rash? How was the label change? So following all of those data points, already you're following multiple data points that often aren't found together. Our system covers for that. Then often in the timeline, you had the reactions, you had your label change, then you have a study, right? A study, a strong study where that interaction is basically a proven interaction. It's a proven interaction that this drug is going to lead to this adverse reaction. That's data that's coming from another database, and being able to look at all the way that all of these different data points interact is not fun or easy to do. Our goal with the dashboard is that it's all happening in one place and you can really monitor all of these signals and these interactions. But oftentimes, when you have visibility, that label change happened, that first study came out, like already when that study comes out, usually the filings are starting, right? You're starting to get cases that are filed. The escalation from there is sometimes slower, sometimes faster to consolidation. But oftentimes you're looking backwards at what's happening, right? That first study comes out, maybe it's not super strong, but it's an initial signal, and you're trying to backtrack and understand what happened before that. Was there a label change? Was it for that interaction? Was there any period of time by which adverse reactions were happening where there wasn't proper warning on the label? Maybe it was, a couple of years ago that you find this gap in coverage where those are victims. Those are people who didn't get proper warning, right? And so trying to find these gaps in coverage is really what the dashboard is going to help you do. And it's one of the big challenges here in connecting the data points. So I would say that is really one big challenge that our system is really looking to try to make far more easy to identify signals and to start drawing conclusions about the likelihood that this is a phenomenon that needs to move towards litigation.
For sure. And I think, as you mentioned, there are humans behind each and every case.
Of course.
And just the ease of getting lost in the labels from the side of people is, yeah. Sean, the next question is for
Oh,
you.
just to like piggyback on that, I think
Yeah, of course.
like especially when it comes to mod, right? I think that one is even more difficult to use. So
Yeah.
and to your point about like these are real people, like some of these event reports are like heartbreaking to read, right? Like it's when's the last time you left a review, right? Like I think I never leave reviews. So like for these people to go out of their way to essentially say like, look, I was using this, whatever it was, it didn't work. This is what happened, right? Like these people need justice, and I think that's what we're trying to give them.
Yeah.
For sure. Um, on that topic, Sean, the question is for you. What are some common pitfalls or limitations when implementing technology solutions in mass torts case management, and how can firms mitigate these risks?
No, I think that's a great question, right? Because depending on the which tort we're talking about, it can be hundreds of plaintiffs, it can be thousands of plaintiffs, right? And I think it all comes back to that what we were talking about, right? Like you need to recognize that these are people going through an extraordinarily hard time. So you need to make it as easy as you can, right? Like as Shelby talked about, we have Plaintiff Link where you're able to upload medical records and it's all centralized. And um, another thing that when speaking with a number of attorneys in this space, right, like age is very important. I didn't really have a lot of time in the demo, but we do have filters on different ages, right? Like these, and I've heard personally, right, there's challenges that are associated when you have an elderly plaintiff, right, in terms of technology, and like they might not want to use technology and they want to be more old school. So yes, we have technology on the plaintiff link, but I think you also have to be able to adapt and be compassionate and recognize these are people, right? Like our intake team has gone through sensitivity training, right? Like these are real people. And I know we work across sort of the entire legal ecosystem from like privacy to ERISA and things like that. But like at the end of the day, I think this is the one where you really have to recognize that these are people that need to be treated with compassion and respect and really take the burden off of them and to make it as easy as possible on them.
Yeah, I think this is a great place to see how AI can be leveraged to be more human. And sort of to take a step back from just thinking technology and how do I run forward, which is super important, don't get me wrong, but to be able to harness these capabilities to really do what attorneys, I mean, what I went to law school to actually do in life, which is to serve justice. And I think especially with mass torts, anything that has to do with human health is incredibly sensitive, and it might look like just one case, but at the end of the day, it's a whole life story of someone behind it. And the ability to use a system that enables you to be more human in the process um, is simply invaluable. Shelby, do you have anything you want to add here?
Yeah, I mean, I think Sean brought up a really great point with age being a factor. Unfortunately, when you have the impact of time, sometimes the adverse reaction is cancer. And that takes time before, it's not like you took the drug and you have cancer the next day. Sometimes there's a latency period of years before you actually see the impact of a reaction. And another thing with age is, sometimes you're speaking to someone where the story started more than a decade ago. They might not even remember where they were treated. They might not even remember what doctor they saw. So, AI is super important, but that human in the loop and that sensitivity element is so much more important in this when you're speaking directly with these individuals. You want AI to help you with efficiency. You want to be able to, go ahead and help them as best as you can to get those medical records and, to take that burden off of their shoulders. But like Sean said, our team's been trained to have that sensitivity training because these are very difficult, very sensitive conversations, and sometimes with people who are much older, and they are also part of their story is significant, and they're also part of a very large phenomenon where there are others out there that them coming forward with their story can really have an impact in us being able to find others with similar stories. And so, yeah, like Sean said, this is different than privacy and ERISA. These cases they're sometimes very hard to work on. And they will definitely pull on your heartstrings. And it's one of the reasons why I really have been, working on these cases with Darrow and with our law firm partners for the last 2 years, because nothing's going to make you feel better than bringing justice for people who were wronged in this way.
Yeah, for sure. Sean, Shelby, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you to everyone who attended this webinar. If you have any follow-up questions, thoughts, we would love to hear them. You have our email that you received the webinar from, and we hope to see you here again. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you guys.
Thanks, everyone.